I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Your brain is actually fighting sleep right now. Monitoring, checking, trying to control something that can't be controlled. Tonight, you'll discover why trying harder to sleep makes sleep impossible. And by the end, you'll understand why the only way to fall asleep is to stop trying. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in bed feeling that familiar tension, or sitting quietly hoping tonight will be different, allow yourself this moment of exploration. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about sleep resistance. From the moment you first noticed sleep slipping away, to the patterns your mind creates in darkness, to the surprising truth about why effort destroys rest. This thoughtful journey through consciousness builds bridges between searching minds. A soft subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more sleep seekers to discover this sanctuary and brings us closer to protect this peaceful space. One sleepy soul at a time. Your journey inspires ours. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where anxious thoughts rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite acceptance. And now we begin. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. This isn't imagination or weakness. It's a fundamental paradox built into how human sleep works. Research from 2024 at the University of Glasgow's Sleep Centre confirms that conscious effort to initiate sleep activates the very brain networks that keep you alert. When you tell yourself, "I must fall asleep now," you're engaging your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning part of your brain. But sleep requires this region to quiet down. The effort itself becomes the obstacle. This paradox has a name in sleep medicine: sleep performance anxiety. Tonight, you'll understand why it happens and how recognizing it begins to dissolve its power. Your experience of lying awake, frustrated, watching the clock is shared by millions of Americans, roughly 30 to 50 million, according to recent Centers for Disease Control data. That's a significant portion of adults experiencing chronic insomnia symptoms. You are not alone in this darkness. Across your city right now, thousands lie awake with the same confusion. The same question. Why can't I do something as natural as falling asleep? This widespread experience tells us something important. It's not personal failure. It's a pattern emerging from how human consciousness interacts with involuntary sleep processes. Understanding this can lift some of the shame and isolation that makes insomnia worse. Sleep is fundamentally different from almost every other biological function you control throughout your day. You can decide to eat when hungry. You can choose to move your arm, to speak, to hold your breath. These are voluntary actions. But sleep belongs to a different category. It's involuntary, like digestion or your heartbeat. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, in his 2024 research updates, emphasizes that sleep is a passive process occurring when wake-promoting systems in your brain finally release their grip. It's not something you do. It's something that happens to you when conditions are right. This fundamental misunderstanding Treating sleep like a voluntary action you can control through effort lies at the heart of sleep resistance. When you try to fall asleep, you activate what's called the arousal system. This network in your brain involves the hypothalamus, brainstem, and thalamus that keeps you alert and aware. Studies using functional MRI scans from Stanford in late 2024 show that people with insomnia have elevated activity in these regions, even when lying in bed with eyes closed. The act of monitoring whether you're falling asleep, checking in mentally, asking, "Am I asleep yet?" is itself an arousal activity. It's like lighting a candle to check if the room is dark enough. The very act of checking creates the wakefulness you're trying to escape. Your brain interprets this monitoring as evidence that something needs attention, that it's not yet safe to let go. The concept of trying activates your sympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for action, alertness, and stress responses. Your parasympathetic nervous system governs rest, digestion, and recovery. Sleep occurs during parasympathetic dominance. But the moment you try, you shift towards sympathetic activation. Your heart rate may increase slightly, maybe 3 to 7 beats per minute. Stress hormones like cortisol, which should be dropping as night progresses, remain elevated. A 2024 study in sleep medicine found that people who report trying hard to sleep have cortisol levels at midnight approximately 23% higher than those who report allowing sleep to come. This hormonal difference matters. Cortisol is a wakefulness hormone. The effort to sleep creates the chemical environment for wakefulness. There's a specific term for this phenomenon in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia: sleep effort. Professor Colin Espy at the University of Oxford systematically studied this in the early 2000s. His team developed the Glasgow Sleep Effort Scale, measuring how much someone tries to control their sleep. Updated research from 2024 shows that higher sleep effort scores directly correlate with worse sleep quality, even when controlling for anxiety or depression. In other words, the trying itself, independent of other psychological conditions, predicts sleep difficulty. People who score high on sleep effort take longer to fall asleep, wake more during the night, and feel less rested. The effort doesn't help. It harms. Your brain has evolved over millions of years to treat sleep as a vulnerable state. In ancestral environments, falling asleep meant being unaware of predators, threats, or dangers. Evolution favored humans whose brains remained cautious about entering sleep unless the environment felt genuinely safe. When you're trying to sleep, you create a psychological state of unfinished business. There's a goal to achieve. From your brain's evolutionary perspective, having an active goal means something still needs doing. Goals require vigilance, monitoring progress, evaluating success. These are all wake-promoting cognitive processes. Your ancient brain interprets your sleep goal the same way it would interpret any survival goal, as something requiring alertness until accomplished. The goal of sleeping prevents sleep from arriving. There's a biological reason why conscious effort can't create sleep. Sleep initiation requires a shift in brainwave patterns from beta waves, associated with active thinking, through alpha waves, then theta waves, and finally delta waves in deep sleep. Beta waves oscillate at about 13 to 30 cycles per second. They're fast, energetic, the signature of your conscious, thinking mind. When you're trying to sleep, you're generating beta waves. You can't think your way into slower brainwave patterns. They emerge spontaneously when cognitive activity decreases. The concentration itself is beta wave activity. The only path to slower waves is reducing mental activity, not directing it toward a sleep goal. This neurological reality makes sleep effort a physiological impossibility, not just a psychological challenge. Attention plays a crucial role in maintaining wakefulness. Your brain has evolved to keep you conscious when you're paying attention to something. Research from the NIH, published in early 2025, demonstrates that directing attention inward, monitoring your body, tracking your thoughts, checking for drowsiness, activates the same attentional networks as focusing on external stimuli. When you lie in bed asking yourself, "Am I getting sleepy yet? Is this working?" You're engaging attention. And engaged attention signals to your brain that consciousness is required. Sleep researchers call this internal monitoring. It has an agenda: to achieve sleep. That agenda keeps the attention system active. Your consciousness keeps checking whether the goal is being met. And as long as consciousness is checking, consciousness remains present. So yes, the answer to our title question is beginning to emerge. You can't fall asleep when you try, because trying is an active mental state, and sleep is the absence of active mental states. The trying prevents the very thing it seeks to create. This isn't a flaw in you. It's not weakness or dysfunction. It's the natural consequence of how sleep works in the human brain. Understanding this paradox intellectually is the first step. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll explore why this paradox exists, how it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, what evolution has to do with it, and what happens when you stop fighting. For now, just notice. You're already here, listening, and whether you fall asleep or stay awake, both are perfectly acceptable. One of the key brain regions involved in sleep resistance is the anterior cingulate cortex. This area sits deep in your brain and acts as an error detection system. It lights up when something doesn't match your expectations. Studies using PET scans from Johns Hopkins in late 2024 show that in people with insomnia, the anterior cingulate cortex shows heightened activity during attempted sleep. Why? Because there's a mismatch between what you expect, falling asleep, and what's happening, still being awake. Your brain interprets this mismatch as a problem requiring attention. The anterior cingulate signals gently that something needs awareness. This neurological signal keeps you locked in wakefulness. The more nights this happens, the more your brain learns to expect the mismatch, creating a self-fulfilling pattern. Your error detection system becomes hypersensitive to the sleep context itself. The concept of performance anxiety usually applies to public speaking, sports, or intimate moments, but it applies perfectly to sleep as well. When sleep becomes something you have to perform well at, it triggers the same anxiety cascade. Performance anxiety involves worry about being evaluated, about failing, about not meeting standards. With sleep, you become both the performer and the audience. You're watching yourself try to sleep, evaluating whether you're doing it right. Data from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine in 2024 indicates that people with insomnia often describe feeling graded on their ability to fall asleep quickly. They set internal deadlines. I should be asleep within 15 minutes. When that deadline passes, anxiety spikes, heart rate increases, muscle tension rises. The body interprets the failed deadline as evidence of a problem, and problems require wakefulness to solve. Performance anxiety turns sleep into a test you're eager to pass but struggling to meet. Your thoughts about sleep have power. Cognitive models of insomnia, developed over the past 20 years and refined with 2024 neuroimaging data, suggest that catastrophic thinking about sleep consequences maintains the arousal cycle. Thoughts like, "If I don't sleep tonight, tomorrow will be ruined," trigger your threat response system. The amygdala, your brain's alarm center, activates in response to perceived threats. It doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a cognitive threat. Like imagining tomorrow's exhaustion, both trigger arousal. Studies show that people with chronic insomnia have larger amygdala responses to sleep-related threats than good sleepers. Their brains have learned to treat sleeplessness as danger, which ironically makes sleeplessness more likely. The thoughts create emotional response. Emotional response creates physiological arousal, and arousal prevents sleep. It's a closed loop where your mental narrative about sleep becomes the very architecture of wakefulness. There's a temporal element to sleep effort that makes it particularly frustrating. Sleep has optimal windows throughout the night, based on your circadian rhythm and sleep drive. Your body's natural sleep pressure builds throughout the day as a chemical called adenosine accumulates in your brain. Circadian signals from your suprachiasmatic nucleus, a cluster of about 20,000 neurons in your hypothalamus, create roughly 90-minute cycles of higher and lower sleep propensity. If you try to force sleep when you're in a lower propensity window, you fight against your biology. Research from Northwestern University in 2025 shows that insomniacs often attempt sleep during these unfavorable windows, which strengthens the sleep effort pattern. You might lie down at 9 p.m. because you should sleep, but your body's sleep drive isn't strong enough yet. The effort to sleep when your biology isn't ready creates frustration, creates arousal, pushes sleep further away. The role of attention in sleep resistance can't be overstated. In waking life, attention is adaptive. It helps you focus on important information while filtering out distractions. But in the sleep context, attention becomes maladaptive. A 2024 study in the Journal of Sleep Research found that people with insomnia show selective attention to sleep-related threats. They're more likely to notice subtle body sensations that might indicate wakefulness. A slight increase in heart rate, a small muscle twitch, a fleeting thought. They're hyper-aware of the bedroom environment, the clock, ambient sounds, temperature changes. This selective attention serves as evidence that sleep isn't happening. Each piece of evidence reinforces the belief that sleep is difficult tonight. The attention itself manufactures the wakefulness it fears. It's as if you've trained your awareness to become a sleep detective, constantly gathering clues that you're not asleep yet, which of course requires being awake to gather. Something subtle but important happens with language and self-talk during sleep efforts. The words you use internally matter. Saying "I need to fall asleep" creates urgency. Saying "I'm trying to sleep" frames it as effortful work. Both phrasings activate goal-oriented cognition. Contrast this with good sleepers, who often report thoughts like "I'm resting" or simply "I'm in bed." These frames don't create the same pressure. Linguistic research into internal dialogue, published in Cognitive Therapy and Research in late 2024, reveals that insomniacs use more imperative and urgent language in their pre-sleep self-talk. Commands like "go to sleep" contain internal contradiction. The commanding tone requires alertness. Gentle, accepting language correlates with faster sleep onset. Something as simple as shifting from "I must sleep" to "I'm allowing rest" changes the neurological activation pattern. Language shapes attention. Attention shapes arousal. And arousal shapes sleep possibility. Your body position and muscle tension provide constant feedback to your brain about whether sleep is happening. When you try to sleep, you might tense up without realizing it. Your shoulders might elevate slightly. Your jaw might clench. Your breathing might become more controlled rather than automatic. Small muscle tensions throughout your body send proprioceptive signals to your brain. These signals say the body is active, alert, holding tension. Sleep involves progressive muscle relaxation, which is involuntary. Research from the University of Arizona Sleep Research Laboratory in 2024 shows that people with sleep effort have approximately 31% more muscle tone in their neck and shoulders during attempted sleep compared to natural sleep onset. This tension isn't random. It's the physical manifestation of psychological effort. Your body literally holds the strain of trying, and that physical holding signals to your brain that readiness for sleep hasn't arrived. There's a phenomenon called pre-sleep arousal, measured using questionnaires and physiological monitors. It has two components: cognitive arousal, racing thoughts, worry, planning, and somatic arousal, physical sensations of activation like elevated heart rate, muscle tension. Both correlate with sleep difficulty. But research from 2025 suggests that sleep effort primarily drives cognitive arousal. When you try to sleep, your mind becomes more active, not less. You might think about not thinking. You might plan how to relax. You might review sleep strategies. All of this is cognitive activity. The pre-sleep arousal scale, updated in 2024, includes items like "my thoughts keep racing." People with high sleep effort score significantly higher. The trying spawns mental activity, which feels like the obstacle to sleep, which increases the urgency to try harder, which spawns more mental activity. It's a cognitive hamster wheel powered by the effort to escape it. Sleep specialists distinguish between sleep onset latency, the time it takes to fall asleep, and sleep effort latency, the time spent trying to fall asleep. These aren't the same. You might lie in bed for 45 minutes, but only actively try to sleep for the first 20. Or you might try actively for the entire duration. Studies show that sleep effort latency correlates more strongly with next-day distress than sleep onset latency alone. In other words, how long you tried matters more than how long you were awake. This makes sense when you understand effort as a stressor. 20 minutes of relaxed wakefulness is less taxing than 20 minutes of intense sleep effort. The trying itself creates a stress experience that extends beyond the bedroom. You carry the tension into the next day, affecting mood, cognitive function, and your anticipation of the following night. An interesting study from the Sleep Disorders Center at Henry Ford Hospital, published in January 2025, examined what happens when people are told not to try to fall asleep. Participants with insomnia were given paradoxical intention instructions. Stay awake as long as possible, but remain lying in bed with eyes closed. By removing the goal of sleep, it removes the performance pressure. The anterior cingulate cortex has nothing to monitor. There's no mismatch between expectation and reality. Many participants in these studies fall asleep faster than on control nights when they were trying. The instruction to stay awake, paradoxically, allows sleep to occur because it eliminates the effort barrier. Your brain, without a sleep goal to pursue, naturally follows its biological rhythms. Sleep arrives not because you've achieved something, but because nothing is preventing it. The bedroom environment can become what psychologists call a conditioned stimulus for arousal. Classical conditioning applies to sleep. If you repeatedly experience frustration, anxiety, and wakefulness in your bed while trying to sleep, your brain begins associating the bed itself with those states. Just lying down can trigger a cascade of aroused responses. This is learned. It's not inherent to beds or bedrooms. Research using heart rate variability monitors from Yale School of Medicine in late 2024 shows that people with chronic insomnia experience increased sympathetic nervous system activity within 3 to 5 minutes of lying in bed, even before they begin trying to sleep. Good sleepers show the opposite. Parasympathetic activation begins as soon as they lie down. The bed has become a cue for different physiological states based on past associations. For insomniacs, the bed signals, "This is where I struggle," rather than "This is where I rest." Social and cultural pressures around sleep add another layer to sleep effort. Modern culture often treats sleep efficiency as a performance metric. You might have seen articles about life hacks for falling asleep in 90 seconds. This creates an implicit message. If you can't fall asleep quickly, you're falling short. Sleep becomes another arena for self-improvement and potential inadequacy. Data from a 2024 survey by the National Sleep Foundation found that approximately 42% of adults report feeling pressure to fall asleep quickly, and 37% compare their sleep to others' reported sleep quality. This social comparison and cultural performance expectation fuels sleep effort. You're not just trying to sleep for your own rest. You're trying to meet an internalized standard of what normal sleep should look like. The pressure is both internal and culturally reinforced, making it harder to let go. There's a concept in acceptance and commitment therapy called experiential avoidance. Attempts to escape or avoid uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or sensations. Sleep effort often involves experiential avoidance. You're uncomfortable being awake, so you try to escape wakefulness by forcing sleep. But the avoidance itself strengthens what you're avoiding. By treating wakefulness as something uncomfortable that needs to change, you create more distress around it. Research from the University of Pennsylvania in 2024 shows that people with insomnia have higher levels of experiential avoidance, specifically related to nighttime wakefulness. They struggle to tolerate the experience of being awake in bed. The struggle creates urgency. The urgency creates effort. The effort prevents sleep. And paradoxically, learning to tolerate wakefulness, to accept being awake without needing to change it immediately, often allows sleep to arrive naturally. The acceptance removes the pressure that was blocking sleep's path. Your memory of how long you were awake is often inaccurate. Sleep state misperception, a phenomenon documented in polysomnography studies since the 1970s and studied with modern actigraphy and EEG through 2024, shows that many people with insomnia overestimate their wake time. You might feel like you were awake for 2 hours, but objective measurements show you were actually sleeping for much of that time in light stage 1 or stage 2 sleep. Why does this matter? Because if you believe you barely slept, concern about sleep increases the next night. your memory, influenced by negative emotions and hyperarousal, creates a narrative of worse sleep than actually occurred. This narrative feeds forward into future nights, increasing pressure. Interestingly, studies show that reducing sleep effort also improves sleep perception. When you stop monitoring so intensely, your subjective experience aligns more closely with objective reality. We're 25 facts into our journey, and the core paradox should be crystallizing. Sleep effort is the mechanism that prevents sleep. Every attempt to control, force, or achieve sleep activates cognitive and physiological systems incompatible with sleep's passive, involuntary nature. Your brain, evolved for survival, interprets effort as evidence that vigilance is required. The trying itself becomes the primary obstacle. This isn't a moral failure. It's a predictable outcome of applying willful control to a process that requires surrender. The good news is that understanding this paradox is the beginning of dissolving it. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to unlearn the habit of trying. Over the next 75 facts, we'll explore why this pattern is so common. What happens in your brain when you try? How the cycle becomes self-perpetuating? And most importantly, what changes when you release the effort? For now, notice how you feel right now, whether drowsy or alert. There's no requirement to change it. You're allowed to be exactly as you are. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell working in silence. Trillions of processes happening. Heart beating, lungs breathing, neurons firing, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing, needing nothing from you right now. Your body knows how to rest without being told. Now we continue. The hyperarousal model of insomnia provides a comprehensive framework for understanding sleep resistance. First proposed in the late 1990s and supported by extensive research through 2025, this model suggests that insomnia results from 24-hour physiological and cognitive overactivation. It's not just that you're aroused at night. Your arousal systems are elevated all day. Studies measuring cortisol levels, metabolic rate, and brain glucose metabolism show that people with chronic insomnia have elevated markers of arousal compared to good sleepers. When you try to sleep at night, you're starting from an already elevated baseline. The sleep effort adds additional activation onto an already aroused system. The hyperarousal model explains why sleep effort is particularly challenging for people with insomnia. Their systems are primed for wakefulness, and effort provides additional fuel. Within the hyperarousal framework, 3 types of arousal interact: cognitive, emotional, and cortical. Cognitive arousal involves racing thoughts, worry, rumination. Emotional arousal involves anxiety, frustration, fear. Cortical arousal refers to brain activation patterns measured by EEG, particularly increased beta and gamma wave activity. Sleep effort activates all 3 simultaneously. When you try to sleep, your thoughts accelerate. You feel anxious about whether it's working, and your brainwave patterns shift toward alertness. These 3 types amplify each other. Racing thoughts create more anxiety. Anxiety increases brain activation. brain activation generates more thoughts. Breaking this cycle isn't about stopping each type individually. It's about removing the fuel source, which is often the effortful attempt to control sleep. Without effort, the arousal cycle gradually dampens on its own. Neurotransmitters play a central role in the arousal cycle. When you're trying to sleep, your brain should be increasing GABA, a calming neurotransmitter that reduces neuronal excitability. It should be decreasing orexin and histamine, which promote wakefulness. But the act of trying keeps wake-promoting systems active. Research from 2024 using cerebrospinal fluid sampling shows that people with insomnia during active sleep efforts have altered ratios of wake-promoting to sleep-promoting neurotransmitters compared to their levels during relaxed wakefulness. The goal-directed state of trying alters your neurochemistry in real time. Your brain chemistry shifts toward alertness because that's what goal pursuit requires. You can't will your neurotransmitters to change through effort, but you can stop doing the thing that's actively shifting them toward wakefulness. When effort ceases, neurochemistry naturally rebalances towards sleep-permissive states. The autonomic nervous system, the involuntary system controlling heart rate, digestion, breathing, has two branches: sympathetic, activating, and parasympathetic, calming. Sleep occurs during parasympathetic dominance. Research using heart rate variability analysis, published in Psychosomatic Medicine in early 2025, demonstrates that intentional sleep efforts increase sympathetic tone. You can measure this by tracking the variability between heartbeats. Lower variability indicates sympathetic dominance. Higher variability indicates parasympathetic activity. During sleep effort, heart rate variability shifts toward patterns associated with stress responses. This happens even if you're lying still, eyes closed, in a dark room. The mental effort manifests in your autonomic system. Your body receives mixed signals. The environment says rest is appropriate, but your autonomic activity says mobilization is happening. This conflict keeps sleep at bay. Removing the context of effort allows autonomic shift toward parasympathetic dominance. Sleep drive and circadian rhythm are the two-process model of sleep regulation. Sleep drive builds throughout waking hours as adenosine accumulates in your brain. The longer you're awake, the stronger the drive. Circadian rhythm is your internal clock, roughly aligned with day-night cycles. Optimal sleep occurs when high sleep drive coincides with the circadian low point, usually at night. Sleep effort can override these signals. If you're trying intensely to sleep early in the evening, your sleep drive might not be strong enough yet. Or if you're trying after midnight when your circadian rhythm has a slight uptick in alertness, sometimes called the forbidden zone, you're swimming against biological currents. The effort makes you less sensitive to natural signals that would guide sleep timing. Learning to align sleep attempts with natural propensity requires relinquishing control and trusting biological timing. The reticular activating system in your brainstem acts as a gatekeeper between sleep and wakefulness. It filters sensory information and determines what's important enough to bring to conscious awareness. When functioning normally, this system gradually becomes less active as sleep approaches. But during sleep effort, the reticular activating system remains engaged. Why? Because you've made sleep itself into something important to monitor. The system interprets your mental focus on sleep as evidence that vigilance is required. Studies using brainstem-focused fMRI imaging from Massachusetts General Hospital in 2024 show heightened activity in the reticular activating system during insomnia episodes characterized by effort. The very act of caring intensely about whether sleep is happening keeps the system that should be shutting down actively engaged. Caring about sleep prevents sleep because caring requires a wakeful monitoring system. Sleep restriction therapy. One of the most effective components of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia works partly by reducing sleep effort. The therapy involves limiting time in bed to match actual sleep time, which increases sleep drive and reduces opportunity for effort. If you're only sleeping 5 hours but spending 8 hours in bed trying, therapy might restrict you to 5.5 hours in bed. First, it increases sleep pressure so that when you lie down, sleep comes more readily. Second, it breaks the pattern of effortful struggle. Third, it rebuilds confidence that you can sleep without trying so hard. Data from 2024 meta-analyses show that sleep restriction reduces sleep effort scores by approximately 45% after 6 weeks, even before sleep itself has fully improved. The reduction in effort precedes and predicts later improvements in sleep quality. Thought suppression. Famously studied by psychologist Daniel Wegner with his white bear experiments, applies directly to sleep effort. In Wegner's studies, people told not to think about white bears thought about them more frequently. This rebound effect happens with sleep-related thoughts. When you try to suppress worries about not sleeping, or when you try to push away awareness that you're still awake, those thoughts return with greater intensity. Neuroimaging studies from 2024 show that attempted thought suppression activates the same prefrontal monitoring networks that maintain wakefulness. You're essentially keeping your consciousness active to monitor whether forbidden thoughts are intruding. The monitoring guarantees both the thought's return and the continuation of wakefulness. Acceptance-based approaches, which allow thoughts to be present without engagement or suppression, show better outcomes. Allowing the thought "I'm still awake" to exist without fighting, it reduces the cognitive effort that sustains arousal. The temporal dynamics of sleep effort reveal that trying tends to intensify as time passes. You might start with gentle intention. I'll relax and see what happens. But after 20 minutes awake, frustration grows. After 40 minutes, effort intensifies. After an hour, you might be using every technique you've ever heard. Research tracking subjective arousal levels throughout extended sleep onset periods shows this escalation pattern. Heart rate increases incrementally. Muscle tension rises. Thought frequency accelerates. This escalation happens because prolonged wakefulness is interpreted as evidence that effort isn't working, which paradoxically leads to more effort rather than less. Breaking this temporal escalation pattern requires recognizing the early stages of effort and consciously choosing a different response. Acceptance. Getting up briefly, or shifting to a non-sleep-focused activity. Interrupting the escalation prevents the deepening trap. Selective attention to internal states is magnified during sleep effort. You might become hyper-aware of your heartbeat, convinced it's too fast. You might notice tension in your jaw or shoulders. You might feel temperature fluctuations or small itches with unusual clarity. This heightened interoception, awareness of internal body states, is both a symptom and a cause of sleep resistance. Research from the University of California, Berkeley, in 2024, used interoceptive accuracy tasks to show that people during active sleep efforts are significantly more accurate at detecting heartbeats and respiratory changes than during relaxed wakefulness. Their attention has turned inward with laser focus. This accuracy seems beneficial, but it maintains arousal. Each detected sensation becomes potential evidence against sleep. The attention loop keeps consciousness engaged with itself. Sleep requires a loosening of self-monitoring, a drift toward reduced awareness of internal states. Metacognition, thinking about thinking, plays an underappreciated role in sleep effort. When you notice yourself thinking, then think about whether you should be thinking, then worry that thinking is preventing sleep. You've entered multiple levels of cognitive recursion. Each level requires consciousness. You're using awareness to monitor awareness, which is inherently wakeful. Studies on metacognitive processes during attempted sleep, published in Consciousness and Cognition in late 2024, show that insomniacs engage in more metacognitive monitoring than good sleepers. They're aware of their awareness. They evaluate their mental states. Am I getting drowsy? Is my mind calming down? Good sleepers simply think. Without thinking about thinking, the thoughts drift, fade, fragment, without a supervisory process evaluating them. Sleep effort promotes this supervisory stance. You become the observer of your own mind, which necessitates a wakeful observer position. Letting go of the observer role creates space for sleep's natural onset. The concept of orthosomnia has emerged to describe perfectionism about sleep. Coined by researchers at Northwestern and Rush University in 2017 and studied extensively through 2024, orthosomnia refers to an unhealthy preoccupation with achieving perfect sleep, often driven by sleep tracking devices. People with orthosomnia obsess over sleep scores, try to optimize every variable, and feel distressed when metrics aren't ideal. This is sleep effort magnified by data. The trackers provide concrete evidence to scrutinize, which fuels the effort cycle. Studies show that for a subset of users, sleep tracking worsens sleep quality and increases anxiety. The devices themselves aren't the problem. It's the perfectionistic, effortful approach. When sleep becomes another domain for achievement, the pressure to perform perfectly triggers the same arousal mechanisms. Sleep resists optimization efforts the way a butterfly resists being held tightly. The gentler your grip, the more likely it stays. Physiological markers of effort can be measured objectively. Researchers track sleep onset latency, not just subjectively, but with polysomnography, which records brain waves, eye movements, and muscle activity. There's often a gap between objective and subjective sleep onset. You might feel like you were awake for 90 minutes, but EEG shows you entered stage 1 sleep after 40. This discrepancy is larger in people with high sleep effort. Why? Because the effort creates a state that feels more wakeful than it objectively is. You're in light sleep but cognitively engaged enough to remember being awake. The memory consolidation during those light sleep stages is disrupted by arousal from effort. Research from 2025 shows that reducing sleep effort shrinks this perception gap. As effort decreases, subjective experience aligns more closely with objective measurement. You begin to feel like you're sleeping when you actually are. The prefrontal cortex, especially the dorsolateral region, is heavily involved in goal-directed behavior and executive function. When you set a goal to fall asleep, this region activates to plan, monitor, and adjust toward the goal. But successful sleep requires prefrontal deactivation. fMRI studies from 2024 comparing brain activity during successful natural sleep onset versus prolonged sleep effort show striking differences. Natural sleep onset shows progressive quieting of prefrontal regions. Sleep effort shows sustained or even increased activity. Particularly in areas involved in self-monitoring, the brain is literally working against itself, using a system that needs to turn off to try to turn itself off. It's like using your hand to push your hand away. The structure of the effort guarantees its failure. Only by ceasing the prefrontal-driven effort can that region naturally quiet, which paradoxically allows sleep's neurological requirements to be met. We've reached the midpoint of our exploration into the mechanisms behind sleep resistance. You've learned about hyperarousal, neurotransmitter shifts, autonomic nervous system conflicts, reticular activating system vigilance, prefrontal cortex contradictions, and the recursive loops of metacognition. Each mechanism reveals the same core truth. Effort activates wake-promoting systems. There is no mechanism by which trying harder to sleep makes sleep more likely. Every pathway we've examined shows the opposite. This isn't to blame you for trying. Trying is the intuitive response to any problem. But sleep isn't a problem to solve through effort. It's a biological process that unfolds when interference is removed. Understanding these mechanisms begins to loosen their grip. Your brain, hearing this, starts to recognize the futility of effort. That recognition itself is the beginning of change. Over the next 60 facts, we'll look at how these mechanisms become self-perpetuating, why evolution shaped sleep this way, and what happens when you genuinely let go. For now, simply rest in this understanding. Your body and brain know what to do. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring consciousness itself. The very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. Sleep effort creates what psychologists call a vicious cycle. The cycle starts with one difficult night. Maybe stress, caffeine, or just randomness made sleep harder. The next night, you try to ensure it doesn't happen again. That trying increases arousal, making sleep harder again. Now you have 2 difficult nights, which increases concern about the third night, leading to more effort, more arousal, more difficulty. Research tracking the development of acute insomnia into chronic insomnia, published in Sleep Health Journal in 2024, shows that the strongest predictor isn't the initial sleep disruption, but the level of sleep effort in the weeks following. People who respond to initial poor sleep with acceptance and minimal effort often return to normal sleep within days. Those who respond with intensive effort are significantly more likely to develop persistent insomnia lasting months or years. The effort, intended as protection, becomes the mechanism of harm. Anticipatory anxiety is a key component of the vicious cycle. Hours before bedtime, you might start feeling concern about the night ahead. Thoughts like, "What if I can't sleep again?" begin circulating. This anticipatory anxiety primes your arousal systems before you even lie down. By the time you're in bed, your cortisol is already elevated. Your sympathetic nervous system already activated, your thoughts already racing. You enter the sleep environment pre-aroused. Data from wearable devices tracking heart rate throughout the evening shows that people with chronic insomnia experience gradual heart rate increases in the 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, while good sleepers show decreases. The anticipation of effort and potential difficulty creates the physiological state that ensures difficulty. Breaking this requires addressing not just what happens in bed, but what happens in the hours leading up to bed. The mental rehearsal of difficulty. The preemptive worry. Conditioning plays a powerful role in perpetuating the cycle. Every night you struggle in bed strengthens the association between bed and struggle. Classical conditioning doesn't require consciousness. It happens automatically. Your brain learns. Bed equals frustration. Lying down becomes a trigger for the entire arousal cascade. This is why stimulus control therapy instructs people to get out of bed if they're not sleeping. The goal is to preserve the bed as a cue for sleep, not wakefulness. If you lie awake trying for hours, you're reinforcing the bed-wakefulness association. Research from 2024 shows that breaking this conditioned association requires consistent behavioral change. Leaving the bed when effort starts. Only returning when sleepy. Avoiding effortful struggle in the sleep environment. Over weeks, the bed gradually becomes reconditioned as a cue for sleep rather than effort. The environment itself can either support or sabotage sleep depending on what associations have been built. Cognitive distortions about sleep fuel the vicious cycle. Common distortions include catastrophizing. If I don't sleep, everything will fall apart. Overgeneralization. I never sleep well. All or nothing thinking. I need 8 hours, or it doesn't count. And fortune telling. I know I won't sleep tonight. These distortions aren't just pessimistic thoughts. They're arousal triggers. When you catastrophize, your amygdala activates a threat response. Cognitive therapy for insomnia, supported by 2024 outcome data, works partly by identifying and restructuring these distortions. Replacing I never sleep with I've had difficult nights and also decent nights reduces the emotional charge. Replacing I need 8 hours with I function fine on varying amounts reduces performance pressure. The distortions create emotional intensity around sleep, which creates arousal, which makes sleep difficult, which seems to confirm the distortions. Challenging the distortions weakens their power to generate arousal. Safety behaviors are actions people take to prevent feared outcomes, but they often maintain the problem. In the sleep context, safety behaviors might include going to bed very early, just in case, avoiding evening activities, taking multiple supplements, or rigidly controlling every aspect of the bedroom environment. These behaviors seem protective, but actually increase sleep effort and anxiety. Research from King's College London in 2024 shows that higher numbers of sleep-related safety behaviors correlate with worse sleep quality. Why? Because each behavior reinforces the belief that sleep is fragile and requires extensive protection. The behaviors themselves become a form of effort. They prevent you from discovering that sleep is more resilient than you think. Gradually dropping safety behaviors, allowing some variability. Trusting sleep more is part of breaking the cycle. Most people find that sleep doesn't fall apart without the protective rituals. The sleep system is more robust than the anxious narrative suggests. Sleep becomes emotionally charged through the vicious cycle. Initially, Sleep is neutral, a biological process that happens, but after weeks or months of struggle, sleep becomes loaded with meaning. It represents success or failure, control or helplessness, hope or despair. Going to bed carries emotional weight. Studies measuring emotional reactivity to sleep-related words using reaction time tasks show that people with chronic insomnia respond more quickly and with more physiological arousal to words like bedroom and sleep compared to neutral words. For good sleepers, these words are emotionally neutral. For insomniacs, they trigger immediate stress responses. The cycle has transformed sleep from a neutral biological event into an emotionally fraught challenge. De-escalating this emotional intensity, finding ways to make sleep more neutral again, is central to breaking the cycle. This happens through exposure to the feared situation without effort, through cognitive restructuring, and through building evidence that sleep can happen without intense emotional vigilance. The cycle is maintained by intermittent reinforcement. Occasionally, your efforts seem to work. You try hard and eventually fall asleep. These occasional successes powerfully reinforce the effort pattern. Intermittent reinforcement is the strongest type of behavioral conditioning. It's why gambling is compelling. You win sometimes, unpredictably, which keeps you trying. Sleep effort operates similarly. Sometimes it seems to help, so you keep doing it, even though the overall pattern is that effort makes sleep worse. The unpredictability of sleep itself contributes. Some nights are just easier for biological reasons, unrelated to your actions. But you attribute good nights to your efforts and bad nights to insufficient effort. Rather than recognizing the role of natural variability, breaking this requires recognizing that correlation doesn't equal causation. The nights you slept well might have been despite your efforts, not because of them. Letting go of effort and observing whether sleep actually gets worse can break the intermittent reinforcement pattern. Hypervigilance develops as part of the cycle. You become acutely sensitive to any sign that sleep might be difficult. Small things that good sleepers ignore. A slightly elevated heart rate, a brief thought, become evidence of impending insomnia. This hypervigilance maintains arousal. You're constantly scanning for threats to sleep, which keeps your threat detection systems active, which is incompatible with sleep. Research from 2025 using attention bias paradigms shows that people with insomnia detect sleep-threatening cues approximately 150 milliseconds faster than neutral cues. A processing speed advantage similar to people with anxiety disorders. Your brain has learned to prioritize sleep-related information as if it's danger-related. This makes sense psychologically. Sleep has become associated with distress, but it perpetuates the problem. Gradually, retraining attention away from hypervigilance involves mindfulness practices, attention-shifting exercises, and building confidence that you don't need to monitor so intensely. The vigilance itself is more exhausting than the occasional poor night. The cycle affects daytime functioning in ways that feed back into nighttime effort. If you sleep poorly, you might feel tired the next day. That tiredness creates concern about needing to sleep well the following night to recover. The pressure to sleep well tonight because yesterday was difficult increases tonight's effort and arousal. Additionally, poor sleep can affect mood, concentration, and stress resilience, making the day feel harder, which increases the stakes for tonight's sleep. Research shows that one of the best predictors of severe nighttime sleep effort is daytime dysfunction and worry. If you can maintain reasonable functioning despite variable sleep, recognizing that humans are resilient and can handle occasional tiredness, the pressure on each night's sleep decreases. Acceptance of daytime tiredness without catastrophizing breaks a critical link in the cycle. The day after poor sleep doesn't have to feel overwhelming, which means tonight's sleep doesn't carry the weight of yesterday's recovery. Halfway through our journey, the vicious cycle of sleep resistance is clear. Initial difficulty triggers effort. Effort creates arousal. Arousal prevents sleep. Poor sleep increases concern. Concern increases effort, and the wheel turns. Each element reinforces the others. Breaking the cycle doesn't require fixing all elements at once. It requires removing the linchpin, which is often the effortful attempt to control. When effort is withdrawn, other elements naturally begin to diminish. Arousal decreases without effort driving it. Concern reduces without evidence of failure. Sleep begins to occur more naturally, which builds confidence, which further reduces concern and effort. The cycle can run in reverse, a virtuous cycle where less effort leads to better sleep, which leads to less concern, which leads to even less effort. Understanding the cycle intellectually is step one, the gradual, patient work of changing responses, challenging beliefs, accepting discomfort, and trusting sleep more than fear builds that understanding. You're building it right now, whether awake or drifting. The cycle only exists if you energize it with resistance. Without resistance, it gradually starves. Let each breath guide you to realize time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living. While the vast universe of minds continues to shift, change, think, dream, this second you're breathing, listening, is unique. Cherish the present moment, knowing that right now, your time is uniquely your own in the universe. You don't need to be anywhere else or anyone else. And we continue drifting. Evolution shaped sleep as an involuntary process for good reasons. In ancestral environments, sleep made you vulnerable to predators and threats. An organism that could voluntarily delay sleep when danger was present had a survival advantage. But voluntary control over sleep itself would be risky. What if you decided to sleep in an unsafe situation? Evolution solved this by making sleep involuntary. Your conscious mind doesn't get to decide when deep sleep occurs. Deeper brain structures, evolved earlier and connected to survival circuits, make that determination. These structures assess safety automatically, below conscious awareness. They respond to cues like darkness, quiet, stillness, and most importantly, the absence of active goals or vigilance. When you try to sleep, you're essentially a newer brain region, trying to command older brain regions to enter a vulnerable state. The older regions don't take orders on this matter. They assess the situation independently, and your trying registers as evidence that vigilance is still required. The vigilance system in your brain evolved to detect threats and maintain alertness until threats are resolved. This system doesn't differentiate between physical threats and psychological threats. Both activate the same neural circuits. When you're trying to sleep because you're worried about being tired tomorrow, your vigilance system perceives an unresolved threat. The threat is abstract, but the physiological response is concrete. Research in evolutionary psychology and neuroscience, published through 2024, suggests that modern insomnia partly reflects a mismatch between ancient vigilance systems and contemporary psychological threats. In ancestral times, acute stress was usually resolved quickly. Escape the predator, find shelter, then relax. Modern stress is ongoing and abstract. Continuous work pressure, relationship concerns, health worries, which keeps the vigilance system engaged. Sleep effort adds to this by creating a new source of vigilance. The goal of sleeping. Mammals evolved different sleep patterns based on ecological niches. Prey animals like rabbits and deer sleep lightly and briefly, ready to flee. Predators like lions sleep deeply for many hours, secure in their dominance. Humans fall somewhere in between. We're social creatures who historically slept in groups, providing shared vigilance. This evolutionary background means human sleep is somewhat flexible and sensitive to context. We're built to have some nights of lighter, more disrupted sleep when circumstances warrant. The problem arises when you interpret normal variability as dysfunction. One difficult night isn't a biological emergency. It's within the range of evolved flexibility. Research on hunter-gatherer societies like the Hadza in Tanzania and the Tsimane in Bolivia, studied by UCLA researchers through 2024, shows highly variable sleep across nights with no apparent distress. Modern culture's expectation of consistent sleep every night may be evolutionarily unrealistic. Accepting natural variation reduces the pressure that creates effort. The concept of sleep pressure, or homeostatic sleep drive, evolved as an automatic system requiring no conscious input. Adenosine, a byproduct of cellular energy use, accumulates in your brain throughout waking hours. As it builds, it creates increasing pressure for sleep. This is an elegant, self-regulating system. Stay awake longer. Sleep pressure increases. Sleep, and adenosine clears, reducing pressure. The system works perfectly without conscious monitoring. But when you try to sleep, you override the system's signals with cognitive demands. You might try to sleep when adenosine levels are still low, before sufficient pressure has built. Or you might be so focused on trying that you don't notice the actual sleep pressure cues. Drooping eyelids, body heaviness, thought fragmentation. The trying creates cognitive noise that drowns out the biological signal. Evolution designed sleep drive to work automatically, like thirst or hunger. You don't need to try to feel thirsty. Similarly, sleepiness happens when you need sleep. Trusting this system means attending to actual sleepiness rather than clock-based shoulds. REM sleep, the stage associated with vivid dreaming, involves muscle paralysis, likely an evolutionary adaptation to prevent acting out dreams. This demonstrates sleep's inherently involuntary nature. You can't voluntarily induce REM sleep or the associated paralysis. It happens automatically when neurochemical and circadian conditions align. The brainstem structures that control REM operate without cortical input. In fact, cortical intervention disrupts REM cycles. This illustrates a broader principle. Sleep architecture, the cycling through different stages, is managed by subcortical regions that evolved to handle this automatically. Your prefrontal cortex, the part engaged during effortful trying, isn't part of this system. It's like a passenger trying to fly the plane by thinking really hard about aerodynamics instead of letting the autopilot do its work. The autopilot functions perfectly when not interfered with. Your sleep architecture operates the same way. The stages unfold in their natural rhythm when you stop trying to manually control the process. Pain and sleep have an interesting evolutionary relationship. Pain prevents sleep when unresolved because pain signals potential injury requiring attention. Evolutionarily, an animal that slept through serious injury might worsen the damage. Sleep effort creates psychological discomfort, the distress of believing you won't sleep, the frustration of trying without success, the fear of consequences. Your brain doesn't distinguish this psychological discomfort from physical pain in terms of whether sleep should be permitted. Both signal something needs attention. As long as you're in distress about sleep, your brain interprets that distress as reason to maintain vigilance. The sleep effort itself becomes the unresolved discomfort keeping you awake. This seems harsh, but from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. Resolving the distress, not by achieving sleep, but by making peace with wakefulness, removes the signal. When the distress fades, the obstacle to sleep fades with it. Paradoxically, accepting that you might not sleep removes the psychological discomfort that was preventing sleep. Human infants are born with underdeveloped circadian rhythms and fragmented sleep patterns that gradually consolidate over the first years of life. This developmental process demonstrates that good sleep is partially learned. Infants learn day-night rhythms through environmental cues and caregiver routines. Similarly, adults can unlearn good sleep through conditioning and then potentially relearn it. But here's the key. Infants don't learn to sleep by trying to sleep. They learn through passive exposure to appropriate timing cues, through feeling safe and comfortable, through biological maturation. Adults trying to relearn sleep through effort are using the wrong mechanism. The learning that's needed isn't effortful skill acquisition. It's reconditioning, building new associations, trusting biological systems, removing interference. Studies on infant sleep development emphasize that consistency, safety, and allowing natural sleepiness are what teach good sleep patterns. The same principles apply to adult sleep relearning. The teaching happens through consistent timing, safe environments, and trust in natural processes. Group sleeping in ancestral humans provided safety through shared vigilance, but also created interesting dynamics around sleep effort. Modern humans often sleep with partners, and research shows that one partner's insomnia can affect the other's sleep quality. The arousal is somewhat socially transmissible, but there's a flip side. In ancestral groups, seeing others sleep peacefully might have signaled safety, promoting sleep in the observer. Modern insomnia, experienced alone with only your own anxious thoughts, lacks this social signal of safety. You're alone with your vigilance, which perpetuates it. Some research from 2024 suggests that people with insomnia report lower perceived safety in their sleep environment. Even when objectively safe, the social cue of others peacefully sleeping, or at least the mental image of the wider world resting, can help. Remembering that millions of people are sleeping peacefully right now, that sleep is happening all around you, might provide a subtle safety signal that reduces personal vigilance. You're part of a sleeping world, even if your own sleep hasn't arrived yet. The evolution of consciousness itself is relevant to sleep effort. Humans have unusually high levels of self-awareness and metacognition, the ability to think about our own thinking This is cognitively powerful, enabling planning, abstract reasoning, and cultural transmission, but it also enables sleep effort. Animals with less self-awareness can't lie awake worrying about whether they're falling asleep. They either sleep when tired or stay awake when not. Without the recursive monitoring, human consciousness, in becoming self-reflective, gained the ability to interfere with its own automatic processes. We can worry about our heartbeat and affect our heartbeat. We can think about breathing and disrupt automatic breathing rhythm. And we can monitor sleep, creating the conditions that prevent it. This is a side effect of advanced consciousness. Not a flaw, but recognizing it as such helps. You're not broken. You're experiencing a natural consequence of having a highly self-aware mind. The solution isn't to eliminate self-awareness, but to direct it differently. Observe without interference. Notice without controlling. Be aware without grasping. Evolutionary mismatches explain many modern health challenges. Our bodies evolved for environments very different from contemporary life. We're built for more movement, different diets, more variable light exposure. Sleep effort is partly an evolutionary mismatch. The cognitive demands of modern life, constant information, abstract worries, performance pressures, keep our vigilance systems engaged far beyond what ancestral environments required. Then we try to sleep at rigid clock-based times rather than responding to natural sleepiness. We use artificial light that disrupts circadian signals. We consume caffeine that blocks adenosine receptors. And we treat any sleep difficulty as a serious problem requiring intensive management. Ancestral humans likely had variable, flexible sleep without much concern. Understanding insomnia as partly an evolutionary mismatch doesn't solve it, but it reframes the experience. You're not failing at a simple natural process. You're navigating a complex interaction between ancient biology and modern demands. Compassion for yourself in this mismatch reduces the shame and urgency that fuel sleep effort. Circadian rhythms evolved in nearly all organisms as an adaptation to Earth's day-night cycle. These internal clocks anticipate daily changes and prepare the body for rest before darkness arrives. When your rhythm aligns with your sleep schedule, sleep comes naturally. When misaligned, due to shift work, jet lag, or irregular schedules, sleep becomes difficult even without effort. Research from 2024 on circadian science shows that chronotype, your natural preference for morning or evening activity, has a genetic component. Night owls trying to sleep at 10 p.m. because society expects it are fighting their biological clock. This creates social jet lag. The effort to sleep at a circadian inappropriate time activates arousal because the body's wake-promoting systems are still engaged. Evolution didn't design humans for standardized sleep schedules. We have individual variation in optimal timing. Respecting your chronotype. Sleeping when you're actually sleepy according to your biology, not when the clock says you should. Reduces the need for effort. Your circadian system works beautifully to promote sleep when honored, but resists when overridden. The predator-prey dynamics of evolution created animals with different arousal thresholds. A gazelle sleeping on the savannah needs to wake instantly at the smallest sound. A bear in its den can sleep more heavily. Human arousal thresholds vary individually, likely due to genetic and developmental factors. Some people are naturally deeper sleepers. Others are lighter sleepers, more sensitive to disturbances. Neither is better or worse. They're different adaptations. But if you're a naturally lighter sleeper and you interpret this as a problem requiring effort to deepen, you create conflict. You're trying to force your arousal threshold lower than it naturally sits. Research on individual differences in sleep arousal thresholds, published in Biological Psychology in 2024, shows that accepting your natural sleep depth reduces sleep effort and improves satisfaction. Even if the objective sleep doesn't deepen significantly, deeper sleep isn't necessarily better sleep for everyone. It's about matching expectations to your biological reality. If you're built to be a lighter sleeper, accepting that removes the pressure to achieve something your system wasn't designed for. Dreaming, which occurs primarily in REM sleep, may have evolved for various functions: memory consolidation, emotional processing, threat simulation. Regardless of its function, dreaming is an involuntary process. You don't decide what to dream or when. Dreams emerge from unconscious neural activity. This involuntary nature extends to all sleep stages. You can't will yourself into stage 3 deep sleep. You can't voluntarily increase sleep spindles or K complexes. The brainwave features of stage 2 sleep. These emerge automatically when conditions are right. The microarchitecture of sleep unfolds according to biological programs you can't access consciously. Trying to control sleep is trying to control something that exists entirely outside the domain of voluntary control. It's like trying to voluntarily control your liver's detoxification or your kidneys' filtration. These happen automatically. Sleep is the same. The only voluntary aspect is creating conditions that allow the involuntary process to proceed. Being in bed, in darkness, without urgent demands. Beyond that, sleep happens on its own schedule, governed by evolutionary ancient mechanisms that don't respond to cortical commands. Evolution also shaped our response to social observation and evaluation. In social species like humans, being watched by others increases arousal. It's adaptive to be more alert when others are observing and judging. This social performance concern exists even in the absence of actual observers. You internalize the observer, becoming your own audience. During sleep effort, you watch yourself, evaluate yourself, judge your performance. This self-observation activates the same arousal systems as being watched by others. You're both performer and critic. Research on self-focused attention and social anxiety, adapted to the sleep context, in studies from 2024, shows that high self-observers during sleep attempts have significantly elevated arousal compared to low self-observers. The internal audience maintains wakefulness because being observed requires alertness, shifting from observer mode to experiencer mode. Being in the experience, rather than watching yourself have it, reduces this arousal source. This is why techniques like body scans or breath focus can help. Not by forcing sleep, but by shifting attention from observing the self to experiencing sensation. We now understand that the evolutionary design of sleep creates the sleep effort paradox. Sleep must be involuntary to protect us from poor conscious decisions about when to be vulnerable. Vigilance systems must override sleep goals when threats are detected, and psychological effort registers as a threat signal. Arousal mechanisms evolved to respond to goals. Observation, discomfort, and unresolved concerns, all present during sleep effort. Natural variation in sleep is built into our evolutionary heritage, not a dysfunction. The human brain's advanced self-awareness enables planning but also enables interference with automatic processes. Modern environments create mismatches with our evolved sleep systems. Understanding these evolutionary foundations helps reframe sleep effort from personal failure to natural consequence. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do, maintaining vigilance when it detects goal-directed activity. The design isn't flawed. The application of effort to a process designed to be effortless creates the incompatibility. Evolution's wisdom is to surrender control to older, more reliable systems. Fighting that wisdom through effort is what creates the struggle. The concept of paradoxical intention, telling yourself to stay awake to fall asleep, works precisely because it aligns with evolutionary logic. When you intend to stay awake, there's no goal failure to monitor. The vigilance system has nothing to watch for. Performance concern dissolves. The anterior cingulate cortex receives no mismatch signal. Without these arousal sources, the biological systems that create sleep, rising adenosine, circadian night signals, homeostatic pressure, can operate unimpeded. Studies from 2025 show that paradoxical intention works best for people with high sleep effort and performance concern. This makes sense. If effort is the problem, removing effort is the solution. For the majority of people lying awake, frustrated, trying intensely, paradoxical intention leverages evolutionary logic. Remove the threat of goal failure, and vigilance ends. It's not a trick. It's alignment with how the system was designed to work. Ancestral sleeping environments were likely quite variable. Sometimes safe caves, sometimes exposed campsites, sometimes shared with many people, sometimes with few. Yet humans slept, because sleep drive eventually overwhelms vigilance. This evolutionary resilience means your sleep system is more robust than concern suggests. You will sleep eventually, even imperfectly, because the biological pressure becomes irresistible. The fear that you'll never sleep is disproven by evolution. No human stays awake forever. The longest documented time without sleep under scientific observation was about 11 days, achieved by Randy Gardner in 1964, during which he fought sleep actively the entire time. Your system wants to sleep. It's built to sleep. The question isn't whether you'll sleep. You will. But whether you'll suffer during wakefulness or accept it. Effort emerges from the fear that sleep won't come. But trusting evolutionary design means knowing sleep will arrive when conditions permit. The trust reduces effort. The reduced effort improves conditions. And sleep, patient and inevitable, finds its way in. Evolution tested your sleep system over millions of years. It works. What doesn't work is your conscious mind trying to improve on millions of years of refinement. Sleep deprivation, taken to extremes, eventually causes involuntary microsleeps. Brief moments where the brain forces sleep despite conscious attempts to stay awake. These microsleeps can last just a few seconds. This is evolution's fail-safe. If voluntary control endangers survival by preventing sleep too long, involuntary mechanisms override. The existence of microsleeps demonstrates that sleep will eventually take you, regardless of your conscious state. The effort to stay awake when sleep debt is high fails. Similarly, the effort to fall asleep when sleep debt is low also fails. The conscious mind cannot win against the sleep system in either direction. It can't prevent sleep when pressure is overwhelming. and it can't create sleep when pressure is insufficient. This bidirectional limitation should be comforting. Your sleep is governed by reliable forces beyond your control. Trusting those forces, letting go of the illusion that your effort matters, allows the system to function as designed. When you're truly sleep-deprived, you'll sleep despite yourself. Either way, effort is irrelevant. Social safety cues in evolution helped groups relax into sleep. The presence of trusted others, rhythmic sounds of breathing, the absence of alarm signals, all communicated it's safe to lower vigilance. Modern solitary sleeping removes some of these cues, but you can recreate them mentally. Imagining yourself in a protected space, part of a peacefully sleeping humanity, held by the earth itself, provides psychological safety signals. This isn't fantasy. It's engaging, evolutionarily relevant mental imagery that communicates safety to older brain structures. Research on guided imagery for sleep, updated through 2024, shows that images of safety, protection, and natural rest environments reduce arousal and improve sleep outcomes. The images work by engaging the evolved systems that assess safety. Your conscious mind knows you're safe, but your arousal systems respond to cues, not facts. Providing those cues through visualization, through reframing your environment as safe, through connection to the larger sleeping world, addresses evolution-old vigilance mechanisms. It's creating the conditions that allow involuntary sleep systems to recognize safety. Grooming behaviors in social primates promote relaxation and bonding. The repetitive, gentle touch lowers arousal and often leads to sleep. Humans have analogous behaviors: gentle touch, rhythmic movement, soothing sounds. Bedtime routines that involve these elements, a warm bath, soft music, gentle stretching, aren't about forcing sleep. They're about engaging evolutionarily old pathways that signal safety and promote parasympathetic nervous system activation. But the routines only work when done without goal pressure. If you're taking a bath while anxiously checking whether it's making you sleepy enough, you've reintroduced effort. The evolutionary wisdom in these behaviors emerges when they're done for their own sake. Enjoyment, comfort, care, not as tools to achieve sleep. Research on bedtime routines in adults, published in Sleep Medicine Reviews in 2024, distinguishes between routines done with sleep pressure and routines done with self-care focus. The latter improve sleep. The former maintain effort. Evolution shaped relaxation behaviors to work through pleasure and safety. Rediscovering these behaviors as intrinsically valuable allows them to work as evolution intended. Laughter and play in mammals serve many functions, including arousal reduction and social bonding. Animals play when they feel safe. Humans laugh when tension is released. Both are signs that the nervous system has shifted from vigilance to openness. People with chronic insomnia often report less laughter and play in their lives. This isn't surprising. The vigilance around sleep creates tension that pervades waking hours. But the relationship might be bidirectional, reintroducing lightness, humor, playfulness into daily life, especially around the topic of sleep, can reduce overall arousal. Making jokes about your sleep struggles, approaching bedtime with curiosity rather than concern, treating the occasional wakeful night as an opportunity for quiet reflection. These shifts engage different evolutionary programs. Threat-based programs activate arousal. Safety and play-based programs activate relaxation. Research from 2024 on positive psychology interventions for insomnia shows that gratitude practices, humor exercises, and playful engagement with sleep difficulties improve outcomes. Evolution wired play and laughter to down-regulate stress. When you can genuinely smile about trying too hard to do something that requires not trying, you've shifted evolutionary programs. That shift creates space for sleep. The attachment system, central to mammalian evolution, influences sleep. Infants sleep better when they feel securely attached to caregivers. Adults sleep better when they feel secure in relationships and life contexts. Attachment isn't just about other people. It's about your relationship to yourself, to your environment, to existence. Insomnia and sleep effort often correlate with anxious attachment styles, where there's ongoing worry about security and safety. Research from 2024 exploring attachment and sleep shows meaningful connections. Anxious attachment involves hypervigilance to threat and difficulty trusting that needs will be met. These patterns can extend to sleep. Hypervigilance to wakefulness. Difficulty trusting that sleep will come. Secure attachment involves a basic trust that the world is safe enough, that needs will be met, that you're held by something larger than yourself. Cultivating this security through therapy, through self-compassion, through practices that build trust, can reduce the vigilance driving sleep effort. Evolution designed attachment to regulate arousal. Secure attachment down-regulates. Insecure attachment up-regulates. Sleep effort is often downstream of attachment patterns. Seasonal changes in sleep show that humans naturally sleep more in winter and less in summer. Ancestral humans likely had some seasonal flexibility in sleep patterns. Modern life removes this natural variability. We expect 8 hours every night regardless of season. This rigidity creates pressure. If you sleep 6 hours during summer months and feel fine, but believe you should sleep 8, you might lie awake trying. The effort emerges from mismatch between natural variation and cultural expectations. Research from 2024 on chronobiology suggests that accepting seasonal and individual variability, sleeping longer in winter, slightly less in summer, varying night to night based on actual sleepiness, improves satisfaction and reduces effort. Evolution didn't create a universal sleep prescription. It created flexible systems responsive to context. Honoring that flexibility means releasing rigid standards and trusting your body's signals. The effort to meet arbitrary standards conflicts with evolved flexibility. Flexibility often results in more stable and satisfying sleep than rigid enforcement does. Grief and loss activate vigilance systems because they represent threat to social bonds, which were critical for survival. Modern humans grieve many types of losses, and these grief processes can disrupt sleep. People sometimes develop sleep effort after life transitions or losses, not directly related to the loss itself, but because the transition creates vulnerability, which activates vigilance. Sleep becomes another area to control when other areas feel uncontrollable. Research on grief and sleep shows that complicated grief, where the person struggles to accept the loss, correlates more strongly with insomnia than acute grief, where sadness is present but acceptance is developing. The acceptance-resistance dimension matters. Resistance to loss creates ongoing arousal. Acceptance allows grieving without chronic vigilance. This pattern mirrors sleep. Resistance to wakefulness creates ongoing arousal. Acceptance of wakefulness allows it without chronic struggle. Evolution designed grief to be time-limited, intense arousal, followed by gradual integration. Learning acceptance in grief can teach acceptance in sleep struggles. Both involve trusting evolutionary-wise processes that know how to unfold if allowed. 3/4 through our exploration, evolution's role in sleep resistance is clear. Sleep evolved as an involuntary process to protect us from poor decisions during vulnerability. Vigilant systems evolved to maintain wakefulness when threats are detected. And effort registers as threat. Natural variation in sleep was adaptive. Advanced consciousness enables self-monitoring that interferes with automatic processes. Modern environments mismatch our evolved sleep systems. The solution isn't to override evolution with willpower. That's what creates the problem. The solution is to align with evolutionary wisdom. Trust involuntary systems. Provide safety cues. Remove goal pressure. Accept natural variation. Allow processes to unfold. Evolution spent eons refining sleep. Perhaps the wisdom lies in surrender. Not giving up on sleep, but giving up on controlling it. Trusting that evolution equipped you with robust, reliable sleep systems that function beautifully when not interfered with. The interference, well-intentioned but misguided, is what we've been calling sleep effort. Removing it doesn't leave you defenseless. It allows your evolutionary heritage to work as designed. The ancient mechanisms know what to do. Let them. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your heart beats. Blood flows. Lungs expand and contract. Thoughts rise and fall. All are circles. Cycles. Endless rhythms. Like your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. A small cycle within the vast rhythm of existence. You are also part of that eternal movement. You don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything unfold in its perfect order, like tides rising and falling, unhurried, unresisting, simply existing. We're almost there now. Acceptance is the antidote to sleep effort. It doesn't mean liking insomnia. It means ceasing the fight against wakefulness. When you genuinely accept being awake, I'm awake right now, and that's okay. Several things happen. Emotional distress decreases. Goal pressure lifts. Monitoring relaxes. Without these arousal sources, sleep becomes more possible. Acceptance removes obstacles. The sleep was always trying to happen. Even one night of practicing acceptance changes the experience. You're awake, but not struggling. Often, somewhere in that neutrality, sleep finds a way in. Letting go of the timeline is crucial. Much sleep effort involves clock watching. I need to be asleep by midnight. These timelines create pressure. Remove the clock from view. Remove the mental timeline. Sleep arrives in its own time. People who can lie awake without time pressure experience less distress and usually fall asleep faster. Urgency creates arousal. Arousal prevents sleep. Release the timeline. Trust that whenever sleep comes is the right time. Stay in the present moment. The future hasn't arrived. This present wakefulness is what's real. Self-compassion reduces sleep effort significantly. People who practice self-compassion around sleep report lower effort and better sleep. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with kindness when things are difficult. Instead of "I'm failing at sleep," try "Sleep is challenging right now, and I'm doing my best." This doesn't solve insomnia directly, but it removes shame that fuels effort. When you stop beating yourself up for being awake, arousal decreases. The inner critic is arousing. Self-compassion activates care systems. Speaking to yourself as you would to a dear friend changes the internal environment. Kindness creates safety. Safety allows rest. Curiosity can replace effort. Instead of trying to force sleep, become curious about wakefulness. What does it feel like? What thoughts arise? This shift from controlling to exploring changes the relationship. People who approach wakefulness with curiosity experience less distress. Curiosity engages an open, exploratory mode rather than the closed, goal-focused mode of effort. Curiosity signals to your nervous system that the situation isn't threatening. Notice subtle sensations, interesting thoughts, the quality of silence. Sometimes, while you're curiously exploring, sleep arrives. Not because curiosity caused it, but because curiosity replaced the effort barrier. Urges come like waves. They rise. They crest. They fall. When you feel the urge to try harder, imagine it as a wave. Waves rise and fall whether you fight them or not. Allow the urge to be present. Feel it fully. Wait for it to pass without acting on it. This practice helps break the automatic pattern of effort. The urge to try harder arises. Notice. Here's the urge to try. Feel where it lives in your body. Breathe and wait. The urge peaks, then subsides. You didn't have to act on it. Urges are temporary visitors, not commands. Redefining success changes everything. If success means falling asleep within 15 minutes, you'll often feel like a failure. If success means being kind to yourself, whether awake or asleep, you can always succeed. Process-oriented goals. I'll practice acceptance. Improve outcomes more than outcome-oriented goals. I'll sleep 8 hours. Why you control process, not outcome. Success becomes achievable every night. This reduces pressure, reduces arousal. You're no longer failing. You're succeeding at treating yourself well, regardless of sleep. This shift moves sleep from the center of your self-worth to a peripheral biological variable. Remove the threat, and vigilance diminishes. There's wisdom in not trying. Eastern philosophies speak of wu wei, effortless action. It means aligning with natural flow rather than forcing. A river doesn't try to flow downhill. It flows. You don't try to digest food. Digestion happens. Sleep is similar. Create conditions, then allow. The Taoist principle of letting be. Buddhist non-attachment. Stoic acceptance. All point toward the same insight. Control what you can. Accept what you can't. You control your bedtime routine, your environment. You can't control when sleep arrives. Trying to control the uncontrollable creates suffering. Peace often brings what effort was pursuing. Breathing naturally shifts arousal states. Slow breathing promotes parasympathetic activity. But if you're breathing slowly while intensely trying to fall asleep, you've added effort. When you simply pay attention to breathing, Breath often slows on its own. This natural slowing comes from relaxation. You're not making it happen. Attention to breath gives the mind something to rest on, reducing internal monitoring. Breath becomes an anchor, always present, requiring no effort to exist. Simply notice. Breath moving in, breath moving out. The simplicity itself is restful. Progressive muscle relaxation can reduce arousal if done without goal pressure. The technique involves noticing tension and allowing release. It only works when done for its own sake, not as a tool to force sleep. When you tense and release muscles while checking, "Is this making me sleepy yet?" you've turned relaxation into effortful work. Process-oriented practice reduces arousal. Goal-directed practice sometimes increases arousal due to performance monitoring. Any practice becomes problematic when yoked to a sleep goal. The practice works when you genuinely enjoy releasing tension, when it feels good regardless of whether sleep follows. The letting go is what works. Visualization creates distance from sleep struggles. Imagine your worry as a cloud passing through the sky, or thoughts as leaves floating down a stream. This gives perspective. You're not the worry or thought. You're the sky or stream, observing things moving through. When you think, "I can't sleep," you become fused with that thought. When you think, "I'm having the thought that I can't sleep," there's space. The thought becomes one experience among many. That space reduces emotional grip. You're larger than the thought. Creating that space throughout the night gradually loosens the effort pattern. Gratitude shifts attention from threat to appreciation. When you recall 3 moments of goodness before bed, brain regions that fuel sleep effort naturally quiet. This isn't denying your struggle. It's giving your mind something else to rest upon. Worry about sleep becomes one thread in a larger tapestry that includes kindness, connection, small joys. That balance creates calm where sleep can arrive. Social connection during the day influences nighttime arousal. Loneliness increases baseline stress, making sleep effort more likely. Feeling connected reduces baseline arousal. People with strong social connections sleep better than isolated people. Connection provides safety signals to ancient mammalian systems. You're part of a group, therefore protected. Therefore, vigilance can ease. This isn't about having many friends. It's about feeling genuinely connected. Feeling your existence matters. When belonging is present, the world feels safer. When the world feels safer, vigilance decreases. Meaning and purpose buffer against difficulties. People with a strong sense of purpose report less distress about insomnia. Purpose provides perspective. Sleep is one variable in a life filled with meaning. When tomorrow matters because you have meaningful work or relationships, one poor night doesn't devastate. You carry on. The ability to carry on reduces pressure. Purpose provides something to do during wakefulness that feels valuable. Wakefulness can become quiet reflection time. This is quiet time I rarely get changes everything. Forgiveness of yourself and others reduces rumination. Unresolved conflicts and self-blame keep the mind active. Forgiveness means releasing repetitive mental chewing on past events. Forgiveness practices reduce cortisol and improve sleep. When you forgive, you close a loop. Forgiving yourself for having insomnia is particularly relevant. Many hold anger toward themselves. This self-blame is arousing. Forgiving yourself, recognizing you're doing your best. that insomnia isn't moral failure. Lifts a weight. The body relaxes when self-blame dissolves. When you stop fighting yourself, sleep stops fighting you. The trying prevents what it seeks. Understanding this intellectually differs from embodying it. Embodiment comes through practice. Each practice weakens effort's grip. Each night you choose differently builds new neural patterns. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes weeks, sometimes months, but the direction is clear. Less effort leads to less arousal, leads to better sleep, leads to less concern, leads to even less effort. You're not trying to sleep better. You're letting go of trying. And sleep emerges naturally. When sleep stops being a goal you pursue, it becomes a natural event you experience. Walking away from bed during wakefulness is stimulus control. It's highly effective. People resist it because leaving bed feels like giving up. It's not. It's honoring your body's signals. If you're not sleepy, lying in bed creates opportunity for effort. You might read, stretch, meditate, or sit quietly. When natural sleepiness emerges, return. Over time, bed becomes a place where sleep happens naturally. Most people see improvement within weeks. The key is doing it without resentment. Leave bed thinking I'm awake, so I'll do something calm until I'm sleepy. Acceptance is the mechanism that heals. Sleep medications are sometimes necessary. They don't address the core issue of effort. They create sleep pharmacologically, different from natural sleep. Sustainable improvement requires changing the relationship with sleep. Medication can be a bridge. The bridge gives stability while you learn new patterns. Acceptance, reduced effort, trust. Once those patterns are established, medication can often taper. The real work is psychological, shifting from controller to observer, fighter to acceptor. Medication doesn't do that work, though it can make the work feel less urgent. Physical exercise during the day improves sleep. It increases sleep drive and reduces overall arousal. But exercise close to bedtime can increase arousal in some people. Timing matters. Finish vigorous exercise at least 3 to 4 hours before bed. But gentle movement can be calming even close to bedtime. Listen to your body rather than following rigid rules. Rigidity increases effort. Flexibility decreases it. Exercise isn't a tool to force sleep. It's natural human activity that has sleep benefits. When you exercise because it feels good, the benefits unfold naturally. Light exposure, particularly morning sunlight, strengthens circadian rhythms. Natural morning light significantly improves sleep quality. But this becomes problematic if done with intense pressure. If you're forcing yourself outside, resenting it, checking whether it's working, you've added effort. Go outside because sunlight feels good. The circadian benefits emerge naturally. Standing in light anxiously, wondering, will this fix my sleep, negates the benefit. Standing in it, appreciating warmth, noticing birdsong creates relaxed states where benefits unfold. Reducing caffeine helps some people by removing a pharmacological arousal source. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors. There's wide individual variation. If you suspect caffeine affects you, experiment with reduction. But if you give up caffeine while anxiously monitoring whether sleep improves, you've created new pressure. The experiment should be curious. Let's see what happens. If sleep improves, great. If not, you learned something. All or nothing thinking creates rigidity. Flexible thinking reduces pressure. Hold outcomes lightly. You've learned that sleep effort creates arousal. You've seen how effort becomes a vicious cycle. You've understood evolutionary reasons sleep resists control. You've discovered the way through isn't trying harder. It's letting go. Letting go of timelines. Outcomes. Control. Sleep happens on its own when conditions permit and interference ceases. Your role isn't creating sleep, but removing obstacles. The biggest obstacle is usually effort itself. Trusting this fully transforms the experience. You lie in bed without agenda. If sleep comes, wonderful. If not, acceptable too. You're simply resting. Rest without resistance is peaceful. The future holds moments of wakefulness. That's certain. The question isn't whether you'll struggle again. The question is how you'll relate to those struggles. Will you meet them with effort and fear, or acceptance and curiosity, the skills you're developing? Acceptance, self-compassion, letting go, aren't just for sleep. They're life skills for all difficulties. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance reduces it. Sleep difficulty can teach profound lessons about surrender. Many report that learning to let go of sleep control improved their relationship with control elsewhere. The struggle became a teacher. The meaning you're discovering extends far beyond the bedroom. Compassion for yourself includes recognizing you did the best you could. Trying to force sleep seemed logical. The effort came from caring about health and well-being. It wasn't wrong. It just didn't work. Now you know differently. You can release self-blame. You can move forward with new understanding. Sleep flourishes in absence of effort. You don't need to be perfect at not trying. Some nights you'll forget and slip into old patterns. That's human. Notice with kindness, gentle correction, infinite patience. Each moment is new. The practice isn't about never struggling. It's about struggling less over time, treating yourself kindly. Tonight, tomorrow night, the nights that follow. Each is an opportunity to practice. Not to practice sleeping, but to practice being at peace with whatever arises. This video will end. You'll be alone with darkness and whatever your mind brings. In those moments, remember, you don't have to do anything. Simply be. Be awake if that's present. Be with sensation, breath, gentle silence, being with what is, without needing it different, is the deepest form of rest. Whether sleep comes or not, you're resting in acceptance. From that place, sleep often arrives. The path is simple. Practice acceptance. Release effort. Trust your body. Be kind. Allow whatever arises. Why can't you fall asleep when you try? Because trying is doing. And sleep is allowing. Trying is grasping. And sleep is releasing. Trying is controlling. And sleep is surrendering. Trying activates precisely the systems that must quiet for sleep to occur. This isn't your fault. It's not a personal deficiency. It's the nature of sleep itself. The ultimate truth is that sleep resistance dissolves when resistance itself dissolves. When you genuinely surrender the need to control sleep, when you deeply accept that sleep will come when it's ready, when you treat yourself with compassion, whether asleep or awake, then conditions for sleep finally align. The effort lifts. What's left is your natural capacity for rest. always there, simply waiting beneath the struggle. You don't need to learn how to sleep. You need to unlearn how to interfere. Release effort. Trust yourself. Accept what is. And sleep will find you in its own perfect time. And so, our quiet journey through the psychology of sleep resistance comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the paradox of trying, how effort itself prevents sleep, to the mechanisms that keep you awake despite exhaustion. Discovering along the way that sleep is an involuntary surrender, not a voluntary achievement. From the arousal systems activated by goal-directed consciousness to the evolutionary wisdom that designed sleep to resist control, we've glimpsed how sleep effort is both understandable and ultimately futile. The truth we've circled throughout 100 Facts is simple, yet profound. You cannot force sleep any more than you can force a flower to bloom by willing it. You can only create conditions and then allow. Sleep resistance reminds us that not everything in life responds to effort and control. Some of the most important things, love, creativity, peace, and sleep itself, come through surrender, not striving. Much of the wisdom about being human happens in this tension between doing and allowing, between controlling and trusting. Sleep reveals the limits of willpower and invites you into acceptance. Without this challenge, you might never discover that letting go is sometimes the most powerful choice available. In these final moments, take the deepest breath you can. Think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening. All awareness, everywhere. Perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Tonight, you've explored the very thing doing the exploring. Awareness watching awareness. Consciousness examining consciousness. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of awareness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. There's no effort left to make, nothing left to prove, nowhere left to go. You're already home. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this thoughtful exploration of the mind helped you understand why trying prevents sleep, or brought you closer to acceptance tonight, a gentle like and subscribe helps other sleepless souls discover this peaceful space too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, through paradox, through brain science, through evolution, through acceptance. You can allow all these thoughts about sleep effort to fade now, like morning mist dissolving in sun, leaving only calm understanding behind. Let your breathing deepen naturally. Let your body feel its weight against the bed, as if gravity itself is gently holding you, anchoring you to earth. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a leaf floating on water, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where trying and not trying don't exist, where there's only rest. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting, ready to continue this journey with you. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and quiet. Tomorrow, the opportunity to practice will be there again. Sleep effort will try to return, but you'll remember, you don't need to fight it or fix it. You need only to recognize it and choose differently. Acceptance instead of struggle. Kindness instead of criticism. Trust instead of control. Rest well, dear friend. And remember, you are not broken for struggling with sleep. You're human, learning one of life's deepest lessons. Some things can't be forced, only allowed. Sleep finds those who stop searching for it. Dream deeper with Psychology for Sleep. Good night.